I guess you just never really know what kind of people are surrounding you. You never know who you're working with or who your neighbors are. Case in point, I discovered that one of my former co-workers had links and involvement had links to terrorism. This former co-worker of mine, he spent time in an African prison he was imprisoned in Africa for 1.5 years on terrorism charges. He apparently left from Canada to go to this particular African country. And it sounds to me like, I could be wrong, but it's my belief from what I read that he went with some of his friends to get terrorist training from Al-Queda. And 2 of his friends were involved in an Al-Queda terrorist attack in an African country that resulted in something like 68 people dying, including those 2 friends of his. He spent 1.5 years in an African prison. Apparently was tortured while he was there. But anyways, he came back to Canada. He was apparently questioned at length by Canadian securities before being let into Canada. And he didn't face, as far as I know, he didn't face any charges when he came back to Canada. Now, I do remember vaguely hearing about him on the news, and it was a pretty big news story in Canada. But apparently he didn't get charged. I don't know. Maybe he is a terrorist, maybe he isn't. But that just really goes to show that you never know who you're dealing with. So I guess the moral of the story is just be very careful of who you associate with. Like when I worked with him, there was no indications that he was possibly a terrorist. I know this guy is a Muslim. I read, in fact, that he was a radicalized Muslim. He wasn't born a Muslim. He converted to Muslim after leaving high school, and I read that he's a radicalized Muslim. I don't know what it is with the Muslim religion. Like, I know that there's more law-abiding Muslims than there are terrorist Muslims, but why does it seem that the great majority of terrorists in this world are Muslims? Again, I'm not saying that all Muslims are terrorists, but why does it seem that the great majority of terrorists happen to be Muslim? Yep, you just never know who you're working with or who you're associating with, I guess. And the reason I know I've been very vague on this story, very vague on details, the reason why I'm not gonna use any names. I'm not gonna say which company I work at or which company this guy previously worked at. He was a former co-worker of mine who quit. I mean, obviously, I'm deliberately being short on details because I don't want to end up saying the wrong thing or saying anything defamatory. But I know what I read. Did raise my eyebrows a bit, but what can you do? It's 2018 after all.